Daniel Farke has completed his press conference ahead of the match against Harrogate Town that is coming up this weekend, but that's not the focus of this video because we had a little bit more news surrounding the entire thing, and specifically I'm going to dive into the conversation of whether or not Leeds United really need to sort out the number 9 position right now. Now, seemingly throughout the rest of this transfer window, I wasn't super convinced. I was thinking, well, we've got 3 and I'm not too concerned. However, we have a little bit of team news that is sort of worrying to me. So first up, we have Patrick Bamford with his hamstring issue. It's a little bit more serious than was expected. It's set to see him out for 4 weeks, and it could be a little bit longer than that if things aren't as we expect and hope them to be. In addition to that, Joel Piroe is reportedly struggling with some muscular injuries, such as strains. I don't know, I'll be completely honest with you, but that means that he's not going to be risked in the match against Harrogate Town. That puts our options at number 9 down to Mateo Joseph, and if we are feeling incredibly desperate, Harry Gray, who is a 15-year-old who hasn't played a game of senior competitive football before. And this is where we start to have the conversation about transfers, because a lot of people have been having a discussion of, do we need a 10, do we need a 9, do we need a keeper, do we need a centre-back, left-back, right-back? All of the positions you could possibly think about have been in the discussion right now. But this is where things get a little bit complicated, because injuries are temporary, but it's a question of how temporary those injuries are. If Bamford's injury is worse and he struggles when he comes back, then that could become 6 to 8 weeks. And that is, let's have a quick look at the date, mid-February, March, which is not really what you need when you're in a promotion push. You don't need to be down to 2 options, one of which is Piroe, who doesn't play as a pure 9, one of which is Mateo Joseph, who doesn't quite have the experience to have the impact that we want right now. So the conversation around a number 9 continues, and there have been a few rumours flying about. It does look like we're set to lose out on Dorturgaman. That is seemingly set in stone because Joe reported yesterday. But more rumours are popping up, such as a link with Emmanuel Latelat, who is currently at Middlesbrough. Admittedly, whenever I've seen him, I've not been super impressed. But there's a conversation to be had around that. Rumours are something like a £15 million bid is what it would take, and I think that is absolutely colossal, and that would cause more problems for us in the long run if we were to not go up. But it's something. In addition to that, Daniel Farke has been having conversations about potentially young players going out on loan. This is another pretty big one, because he said it depends on what injuries are looking like. Joe Gelhardt was another big part of this conversation, and he's not strictly a number 9. But then again, if you're saying players are going to go out on loan, that's a lot of wages going out of the club, and it potentially leaves space in the wage bill for someone that we would be able to sign. Sorry, I'm just quickly double-checking a thing right now. Okay, never mind. It was a story about the wrong thing. I'm an idiot. But if you're going to let Joe Gelhardt go out on loan, you probably want to backfill him and potentially get a number 9 in as a replacement, whether on loan or permanently. In addition to that, there was more conversation around the 9 position specifically when it came to transfers. He specifically said, the number 9 is a position we should be aware of. Sorry, I didn't do banners this time because I've got notes on a number 9, but he did note that we've got a good amount of talent in the squad. He noted the Piroe, he noted Joffy, he noted Willie Nonto as someone that can potentially play at a number 9 if it comes to it. And this is part of the thing that a lot of people don't like. This is the square pegs, round holes conversation that everyone loves to have at the same time. But in modern football, you don't just play in one position. I can potentially see Nonto playing that role, even though admittedly it's not one that he's super familiar with. But a bit of concern for me comes from the fact that the 9 conversation is potentially distracting from the 10 conversation, because that feels like a bit of a bigger one. Aronson is gradually losing his step at the moment because he is being run into the ground. So is it a conversation of we're forgetting about the number 10 because we're having the number 9 chat? Or is it a question of sort the number 9 then come back to it? In addition to that, Farke noted that Firpo's back in training, as is Ilya Gruev. This is a pretty good thing, because with Firpo back, if he's playing, then that pushes Voba into centre-back potentially, that pushes Ampadu potentially into midfield, and that pushes potentially a Rothwell into the 10. And again, you're having the square pegs round holes conversation, and I think this gets a lot more quickly solved if we just say, yeah, we'll sign some players. And I would love it to be early in the window, but we know that's not how the 49ers work. The 49ers work in that patient, calm manner where it's a case of, okay, We'll wait and we'll wait and we'll wait until teams are desperate to get these players off their books, and it will potentially cost us a little bit less money. It was the case for Autanaka. It was the case for Isaac Schmidt. It was the case for Laji Ramazani. A hell of a lot of players have a hell of a lot of talent and will want to move and won't move until the end of the window. And that seems to be the area in which we are always willing to strike. And there was one specific line that Daniel Farke said in this press conference, and it stuck with me a little bit and was one that I specifically had to note down word for word, because it seems like we get a little bit lost as Leeds fans a lot of the time. A lot of us are screaming for a 9, for a 10. We're saying to drop certain players and bring certain players in because sod it, we know better. Not necessarily. But the line was, he signed a contract for Leeds United, not Leeds divided. And that, I think, is going to be a very, very big message for me. Because when it comes to the window, we know that Daniel Farke wants a number 10. Thing is, if he doesn't get it, that's likely not his own fault, because he is the guy that is sat in the press conferences, but he's not the one saying behind the scenes, this is our budget, because that's not something he decides. That's down to the blokes behind the scenes. That's down to the 49ers. He's making the argument for the decisions that are sometimes made for him. So at the very least, until the end of the transfer window, whilst there is potential for things to happen, and I do very genuinely think things will happen, I don't see a goalkeeper happening. Not after the way that Daniel Farke has backed Ilham Meslier in that last press conference. I do think that Meslier will be dropped, and if Darlow comes in, has a good cup game, as was suggested, then maybe he can stick it out. But I do feel like in terms of transfers, if we stay as that Leeds United rather than the Leeds divided, the atmosphere online will be better, the atmosphere in the ground will be better, and people will ultimately pick up on that positivity and we'll start heading in the correct direction. I say that, we're at the top. There's not really a correct direction to head because we're already heading in it. But the general gist of what I'm trying to say is the number 9 conversation, I do think it would be helpful to have one. I think if it does happen, it'll be at the end of the window. I don't see anything happening before Saturday, at the very least. I don't see anything happening before the last week of the transfer window. But if we all sit it out and wait and be patient, we know the 49ers like to work at the end of a window, and we know they like to do it quietly. And we know that Daniel Farke has said there's 2 positions that we're staying awake on. And that's what matters to me. But at the end of the day, as always, that is just what I think, and I know what I think varies from what you guys think a hell of a lot of the time. So if you have any particularly strong ideas on what I've said here, have a shout at me in the comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're not yet. That's always really appreciated. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you later. I am so mad at Pat for being injured again. It makes it really hard to back him sometimes.